With TrackX, as you mentioned before, putting it simply, it delivers live fluoroscopy without constant radiation. So how do you technically overcome latency and accuracy challenges to make this seamless for surgeons?
That's the secret sauce of TrackX. Therefore, you can take any image at any pose at any time, update your image, and within milliseconds, instantaneously you're operating. It's the benefit of live, continuous x-rays without the radiation. That's the virtual live fluoro. That's how we design the software. And unfortunately, that's a real conversation, is it worth it to use this technology today?
You can't replace part of the brain.
Treat them the same.
Source of truth for the MedTech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the MedTech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the $90 billion company. They had help up high, a lot of things. State of MedTech.
With your host, Omar M. Khateeb.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today's topic and guest it's an interesting one. So many of you know, after I had left medical school, my first start in the industry was with a little company called Missouri Robotics, or first robotic spine platform, got acquired by Medtronic. And during my time in the world of spine, the one thing that I did notice, and this was kind of one of the value props that Missouri had, was a reduced fluoroscopy. For any of you who have been in minimally invasive surgeries, you know that that's the thing that every patient wants. It's what every surgeon's doing. It's more and more surgeries are going that direction. The problem about this in spine is that, no offense to the other orthopedic surgeons, but spine is extremely complex, high-risk surgery, and it requires a lot of fluoroscopy and radiation, to the point that there are surgeons that I've heard about 10, 15 years ago who actually developed malignancies and passed away as a result of that. So there really wasn't any solution on the market until TrackX was born. I'm joined by its founder, Dr. Robert Isaacs, who, when I left medical school, was one of the first surgeons that I'd heard about that was a surgeon / entrepreneur. Dr. Isaacs, it's great to finally have you on the program. Welcome. And how are you doing today? You're joining us from your headquarters in North Carolina, I believe, correct?
Yeah, we're in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Thanks, and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you guys, like any startup, are always fundraising, and I think every investor is going to love the fact that you have a headquarter in North Carolina versus like San Francisco or New York, where you're paying an arm and a leg for office space. So that's always, it's a good start,
It's actually a great place. It's just outside the Research Triangle. It's a great place to hire people. Awesome training in this area. Awesome opportunity to get really good quality people.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, before we talk, shop in terms of the technology, the market, and everything, give us a little bit of background on yourself. Like, first of all, like, who is, before you were Dr. Isaacs, who is Robert Isaacs? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And then, how did you, complete your training? Like, where'd you train and everything? Let's dive into that first.
Let's see. I grew up in Connecticut. I born in Kentucky, and ultimately went to med school in Texas, and Vanderbilt.
Oh, where'd you go to med school in Texas?
I went to Baylor.
Oh, Baylor's a great program. I had no idea that you're a Texas boy. That's awesome. Very cool.
Off to Vanderbilt for neurosurgery training, and originally wanted to be a skull-based surgeon, but realized that I really my calling was spine. And had the opportunity during that time to do a research year, which is kind of a requirement, and did it on, of all things, trying to make a robot anatomy move through thought. And from that, had to work on a lot of computer noise reduction software. So signal to noise and things like that ultimately became what we used some of that training to make Bandini, and then ultimately LessRay was really based a lot on that type of technology. And then that same thing spun into TrackX. So it was a really great opportunity to do that year and got a lot of great training from it.
That's fantastic. Well, and I want to touch on that real quick, but just kind of going back, I think every physician, especially in surgeon, when you choose a fellowship and specialty to go into, it's usually because of an influence of somebody. So you wanted to do skull-based neurosurgery, but you moved to spine. Like, why did that happen? Did you have a mentor that kind of influenced you, or if you can pinpoint it to a specific moment, what was it?
Yeah, no, a guy named Richard Berkman, who was Reg Hade's first fellow, came back to Vanderbilt and started around the time and he just was a tremendous mentor. And he was, and then all of the all the physicians I was working with, there was a very heavy spine presence at Vanderbilt. And it was fun. These guys were doing great stuff. They were really pushing the edge of the envelope, and which was, and then ultimately I got to the opportunity to work with Rick Fessler, and that was life-changing for me. He is incredible, a great mentor, a great scientist, and honestly just understands where he can see the future, and helps you see how that's possible to do that. And so, yeah, I was lucky enough to work with several great mentors.
That's fantastic. And before we get into TrackX, I do want to point out one other thing, especially for the investors listening. So like, this is not your first rodeo. And I remember when I was in Missouri hearing about Bandini, great name, by the way, and LessRay, another great name. So can you kind of talk to us a little bit about what each of those companies did and what the ending result was for each of those?
Yeah, we, when I started working with Dr. Fessler, he was just starting doing minimally invasive spine surgery. And at the time, he was, what you could see was that people were really gravitating towards it, how they wanted to do bigger and bigger, more complicated cases, and actually putting in screw is the same if you do 1 level or 100 levels. It's going to put screw. But connecting with a rod was something that was so challenging when you put in 3 screws on one side. And people were starting to talk about doing trauma cases and scoliosis cases where there was, potential for 10 plus screws on a side. And my obvious thought to me was, how are they going to link this up with a rod? And so I had an opportunity between the time I left the clinic and then joined Duke. I had a couple months off and so I figured I'd solve the problem. And so started to work on the technology that ultimately became Bandini, and that rolled into the company, and we had a nice exit from it. And it was the first custom-made orthopedic implant on the market, and is still going gangbusters now 15 plus years later. So we did very well with that. And with that, I was able to, because I needed to get a bunch of people, mechanical engineers, IP lawyers, FDA people who understood the navigation space because we were using a navigation platform and the like. I had to collect all these people to help with the project. Once we sold it, I had a group of people that knew how to do something. I had all the research that we did during my residency, and it was an obvious problem because one of another serendipitous situation was our serum tech who showed me how to decrease the radiation on an X-ray machine. It's just pushing 2 buttons. You can decrease radiation 90%, 95%, with literally pushing 2 buttons. It's so easy. It's just that it makes the image so grainy and so hard to see. And so it's a signal and noise problem. Is that you can decrease the radiation, you just up the noise tremendously. The signal's there, but it's hidden under noise, kind of like static on an old AM radio. And so, but that's the problem we were working on. We were working with brain signals during my research year. And so applied kind of something that looked like that. Think about it as Adobe Photoshop to improve the quality of an image, and leverage the people that we had emulated with the nickel company and formed what was LessRay, which was a way to take as many X-rays as you want with 90-95% less radiation each X-ray you take. It looks like a full dose image, but it's actually a low radiation image that we fool your eye into thinking it's a regular dose image. And we took it to the FDA a handful of times, got a bunch of units in the field, and was doing very well with that, and then ended up selling that off as well. And then after a couple of successful runs at it, it was obvious to us that this technology that was needed kind of with that, kind of a fluoro-based technology, was something that was like a navigation platform. So it was going to allow people to not just lower the radiation on each image, but actually make it easier, faster, more efficient to do surgery. And that was what was missing on the LessRay side. And so we realized that we had a technology we could apply to that, kind of pivoted after everyone looked for NuVasive, who acquired it for a while, came back and started working on TrackX. And it's the bit of TrackX. That's
fantastic. And you're a professor for spine surgery over at Duke for some time now. You're full-time at TrackX, right?
Yeah, correct. I left after about 14 years.
Got it. So when you started TrackX, was there any was there any IP conflicts or any issues like that because of LessRay, or completely different?
There was a possibility for that. So we dealt with that up front. It's always something you have to think about. It's a great point, actually, if you're trying to both with your part of a university and trying to spin off technology, and if you're trying to take technology that is in any way kind of, I'll call it overlapping or potentially overlapping. So we made very sure that we attacked that problem early up front and separated the IP completely, separated the code bases completely, and worked on that pretty aggressively early on. It kind of stifles early innovation, but it does allow a clean break and a nice separation of the technology.
Got it. So with TrackX, as you mentioned before, like it essentially, putting it simply, it delivers live fluoroscopy without constant radiation. So how do you technically overcome, let's say, latency and accuracy challenges to make this kind of like seamless for surgeons?
Part of our IP is all about how to take an image for a CR, and any image is taken from the CR, and allow that to be trackable, that be navigable. So I think if you've worked in the navigation space, a lot of you're aware that you can take an image and then you can make that image trackable. But that's kind of that registration step, it's called, is kind of a pain in the butt, and it takes a while, and doing it accurately is something that is time consuming, challenging, and sometimes not accurate. And so what we did was work on how we could make the CR, not the image, calibratable. So make it so that you could take any image from the CR and turn it instantaneously into a navigable image. That's kind of the secret sauce of TrackX. And so therefore you can take any image at any pose at any time, update your image, and within milliseconds, instantaneously you're operating with accurate information about that image. And that means you can update your image over time and not be stuck on what is often drift. So drift is when it's accurate at one point, but then it gets kind of worse and worse as the case goes along. Accuracy kind of dissociates from where it was initially, because it's good when you register it, when you link the two together, kind of work reality with your X-ray, and then kind of gets worse and worse. And we can avoid that by taking you X-rays.
Got it. And, just for the people who are watching this on YouTube and Spotify, I do want to bring up what that kind of looks like. Maybe you can kind of give us a little play-by-play. So this is on the TrackX website. For those who are interested, you can go to TrackX.tech. Let me press play and kind of forward this a little bit. So here we go. So you can kind of give us like a little bit play-by-play what we're seeing.
Yeah, so basically we can attach a widget, we call them snaps, onto any instrument. And once we do that, and you take an image of it, which is, you'll be able to see the instrument and be able to track off. So there's the instrument. And now when you move the instrument, it looks like live fluoro. It looks like a live continuous stream of X-rays. You take an X-ray and it'll be where we tell it, where we say it is. And then as you move, that's all virtually generated, adjust to the next and wherever you want it. And this problem of trying to find the right spot is something that takes a minute and a half. It takes X-ray, constantly moving an X-ray because you don't know where you were. You don't know where you are. You just have this past tense information. By showing people this virtual representation of what it would look like if you're constantly X-raying, it's the benefit of live continuous X-rays without the radiation. That's the virtual live fluoro. That's how we designed the software.
And if we go down, let me see, I saw it earlier. I think it might be under here. So like these are the different tools that you have. So are these fiduciary markers and they just attached to existing tools, or how does that work?
Yeah, usually we just have, we call them snaps. We have some of the blue in this case, but they're various colors like Z here, and they literally snap onto that instrument where the surgeon wants to track, becomes trackable in the software. So we could attach snap onto any instrument, And therefore the surgeon can track the instrument that they're interested in. If they want to track what's a gear shift or a JMC or this or a drill, what have you, we have a snap, a tool, a little plastic disposable single-use item that can snap onto that instrument, surgical instrument, and then that instrument becomes trackable in our software. That shows up like you saw a minute ago, where it looks like live fluoro. So we've created a universal and specific group of snaps that do that, and our software is based to allow it to quick registration and quick re-updating so that you get that seamless operating experience.
Is it safe to say that, like, essentially with those snaps, you're snapping on something to tools and in a way like digitizing the tools? Is that one way to kind of look at it?
100%. You think about the experience of being in the operating room with oftentimes other technologies. You have to, number one, you can only use certain tools. You have to go and tell the software what that tool is. So you have to have a person in the room that walks over to the computer screen and is typing or dropping down menus and clicking buttons and stuff. That's a person's job. That means that person has to live there. So what we decided was just to take it from how can we make it seamless like a normal operative experience. The normal people are in the room kind of doing their job, but not extra people. And so we can make it so that you can just hop on the snap on an instrument, you show it to the camera, and then you can track that tool instantaneously. No touch screen, no step, no wasted time. And time is really what is a huge factor in surgery. And it's a huge driver for surgeons to adopting technologies. You make something fast, then you make them faster, more efficient, make them accurate. It's really a driver for adoption of technology.
Interesting. And something I want to ask you is that one thing that you talked about, and I won't show this slide, but I'll read it back to the audience, is you're essentially going up against like robotics and navigation, where those things do cost a lot of money, but there's a lot of money being thrown into them because it's a huge investment for companies and they want to make sure that they're successful a lot of times. And unfortunately, those platforms are just being given away because larger companies just want the implant business. You had an interesting slide from your LSI talk where you did a financial comparison between navigation and robotic. So for navigation robotics, you have millions versus hardware commitments. For TrackX, it's a $0 upfront capital investment because there's no capital. On the navigation robotics side, you had service contracts, which range anywhere from $60,000 to $80,000 a year. For the people who are listening, especially investors, just to put that in context about how important those service contracts are to a robotic company, I think close to almost a third of Intuitive's revenue, which is a $200 billion market cap company, comes from service contracts. For TrackX, you have very simple pricing. Again, no service contracts. And then the last thing is the disposables or case coverage fees. For TrackX, you only have a disposable pricing with volume commitments. You don't really have case coverage fee. So in listing those things, which one of those things do you think is one of the main economical drivers for why a hospital would be adopting your technology?
Our two wins are we can offer the same type of structure because different hospitals will be interested in different different business models in order to make sense for them and how they view the best way it's going to adopt technology. But in general, you're going to have to commit to either a certain number of implants or upfront capital to acquire like the robot or navigation system. And by not having that type of commitment and allowing surgeons to use the technology they want, use the implant company they want, and have the hospital be able to negotiate with every implant company or whichever implant company they want to, and not forcing their surgeons into using one particular implant company. It really gives the hospital a lot of financial freedom to not be locked in for several years into hardware commitments, which is how they're going to. They're not giving away for free. They're requiring a certain number of implant business to be shifted over to their company, where they're making them pay for it up front. We're giving hospitals a lot of freedom to not have to have that type of not be locked into that type of relationship. It's a big deal.
Got it.
It's
And,
free.
something
for-
that
choose
I'll
what-
go.
I was say it's freedom for the surgeon to choose what they want, for the hospital to be able to as well.
Well, on that topic, one thing that you had talked about is that 80% of spine surgeons don't actually use robots or navigation systems. Why do you think TrackX is starting to resonate with those surgeons if others have failed to gain traction when it comes to the adoption?
We're not really, we're not looking at those, the 20% that have adopted. We're trying to think of the 80% that haven't, and the ones that haven't are, I don't think they wouldn't adopt the technology. I think they would adopt the technology if it was simple, if it made cases more efficient, less efficient, if it actually lived up to the goals, which is decreasing radiation, decreasing time of surgery, making you more accurate, giving you a better patient result. If you can supply typically at least two of to a surgeon, you can get some adoption of the technology. If you don't, if you slow people down, but you ultimately make it more safe, there's a trade-off. And so surgeons have to say, am I really gaining a lot safety perspective relative to the additional 30 minutes or an hour it's costing me per case? And unfortunately, that's a real conversation, whether it's active conversation they're having or it's in the back of their minds, is it worth it to use this technology today, this case, because I don't know that it's really helping me produce better surgery results for my patients, and it's costing me the ability to do an extra case or two and help more people. And so by consistently showing we can decrease time of surgery, by consistently making radiation dramatically less of an issue, we can get to the surgeons who wouldn't normally want to adopt those technologies because they're not willing to make the sacrifices, if it were, to do that. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I think this is where it's a very interesting opportunity in the market because, while I'm a big fan of robotics, the problem with those platforms is that it does force surgeons to do things a certain way. And, it's like, I don't know, it's like building a house. Sometimes there are certain tools and things that you want to do a certain way, but if you have to use certain technology and it forces you another way, it's not user friendly. The other side of it that I want to ask is that, compared to a lot of startups that we see here on the show, you guys are actually commercially available, generating revenue. You had a very nice slide on that at LSI, but maybe you can give us an update, like cases to date, revenue, if you want to share that, whatever you want to share, because I think it's really important to point out that you guys are getting commercial traction, generating revenue.
So we've done several thousand cases. We've doubled our revenue year over year over the last several years.
Fantastic.
And no, we're doing very well. I think we're getting to the right people that are, there's absolutely, the robots, 3D navigation platforms are amazing technologies, and they're absolutely suited for certain cases. There's no question. We're not trying to compete. We're trying to look at the areas where they're potentially having trouble getting adoption. For example, like an endoscopy case, where getting a reference array is going to be a bigger incision than actually the procedure itself. And it's not that those guys don't need a navigation platform. They actually could benefit tremendously because they get tremendous amount of radiation. So giving them a tool that allows them to do surgery better is something that makes it easy. People see value right away. Up to the extreme is like lateral, XLIF, prone lateral, PTP, that type of thing. It's the fastest growing area of instrument spine. It's been so for a dozen years or more. And it's very hard for any technology that doesn't re-update to track something that's a very mobile area of the body that constantly is changing the anatomy as you're operating on it. So frequently when you put an implant in, it will change the angle of the spine, and that totally disrupts the accuracy of all the navigation products out there that can't can't re-register. They can't re-update the anatomy. And so that's where we're getting a lot of traction. So we get it in spots where we can make a lot of headway and really capitalize on the fact that there are some challenges out there in this space.
Interesting. And, when it comes to lumbar fusions, again, you're a surgeon, I'm not, but just from my experience in spine, you do have a lot of like complex scoli cases, complex spine surgery, but for the most part, when you do like a typical 2-level lumbar fusion, like these aren't like hyper sophisticated cases where you need a robot necessarily. Do you feel like that's the big opportunity for TrackX, since you mentioned only 20% of surgeons are using navigation robotics? So there's this huge market of, I don't want to call it basic spine surgery, but like pretty straightforward spine surgery that might be even done at an ASC. You don't need a robot, you don't need navigation, but TrackX sort of serves as this third option between manual, high fluoro, no nav or robot versus robot and nav. There's this big market in the middle that nobody's servicing. Is that the better way to look at the, at least, business model for TrackX?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have a very, very complex case, you could make a strong argument that there is a much better technology out there that can give you this kind of complex anatomy understanding and do the case better than we can. There's no question. But at the opposite extreme of that is the spine market is heading towards the outpatient center, as you said. Its growth rate in the ASC is tremendous. Year over year, it's showing huge growth rate. And where more and more lumbar fusions are moving that way, cervical that majority has moved that way just in a couple of years. You're seeing what's happening in the marketplace. Simple, easy to adopt, easy to use technology with a small footprint, reasonably low price point, fast to adopt, and they can offer the benefits of navigation without the drawbacks of increased time, large footprints, very expensive, et cetera. And so, yes, we're looking at the majority of spine surgery, which is 1 and 2 level fusions, the procedures that aren't even necessarily instrumented, like endoscopy, decompression, even SI fusion and the like, that are all moving toward the outpatient center. And those are absolutely ripe opportunities for technology.
Yeah, and for the investors who are listening and just want to share a data point on this is courtesy of our good friends over at LSI and their trusted market intel team. For those who are interested, go check out Compass, which is our favorite and only market intel platform that we use. But if you look at all the spine surgeries from cervical, thoracic, and deformities procedures, lumbar, vertebroblasties, kyphoplasties, and other surgeries, of all of them, lumbar spine has the highest CAGR, about 4.3%. And so it's definitely a growing market. And again, I think the other side of it is that given the patient population here in the US and the move to ASCs, there's this big opportunity where more procedures are done in the ASC setting. Nobody wants to go to a big hospital system, but in the ASC setting, I think because of the way that they're run, there's more of a likelihood to adopt TrackX versus like spending a lot of money on the navigation or robotics system. Plus, even if I wonder if you would agree with this, even with the adoption of that, it's really tough for those companies to service all those ASCs. I think that's the other tough side of it, right?
Yeah. It is. There's a lot of business that way.
Because you don't have a service model, nor do you need like any in-person case coverage.
Ideally, it's got to be simple to use. ASC is a volume business. ASC is speed, efficiency. They're very well run typically, but yeah, they can't afford having people, costs, and all those things are a challenge because there's a limited, and honestly, they get reimbursed. Right. So facilities got to figure out how to be efficient and make money off of a smaller total. And that means you can't afford to have 7 additional people in the OR that are doing all the things like setting up and getting extra CAT scans and other things, all which cost money and cost time. And if we can avoid those things and make people able to do those procedures in that venue, it's a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah. I want to go to some of the IP stuff on the product side. So you guys had FDA clearance essentially for and by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to get your regulatory team upset with us, but essentially you have FDA clearance for any fluoroscope and IP built around the scope. not just the image. So how does that defensibility essentially set you guys up to scale across devices, specialties, and geographies?
The way we developed the platform was with a broad FDA clearance. So it wouldn't have to go back to get, which is typical. You typically have to go back for each procedure and certainly for each new area of medicine. So to go from to do lumbar fusion to do cervical fusion, you have to back get another clearance from the FDA, though they're both spine. We flipped that. So instead, we proved that we could use the technology across body, across all of radiation, the radiology space, and across the different procedures. So that way, to get a broad clearance up front, as opposed to then having piecemeal clearances again and again and again, and constantly have to go back to the FDA, which is a huge both financial cost as well as just time commitment. It's a tremendous burden. But by flipping the script, if it were, really put us in a better position to go into foot, ankle, trauma, go into other orthopedic subspecialties or even beyond, whenever it makes sense from the company's perspective.
Yeah, and so you kind of read the question really well. So I was going to lead into asking you about, spine is obviously your beachhead, but when you think about expanding TrackX across, let's say, orthopedics and other fluoroscopy heavy specialties, like what would be the next logical place for you guys to go?
Probably an adjacent orthopedic specialty makes sense for various reasons, but we're doing a lot of those types of procedures, and we're doing it in a way that orthopedic surgeons think. A lot of the same tools, a lot of the same imaging. Even if you think about orthopedic trauma for pelvic fracture, for something that impacts the hips, is effectively the same screws or the same instrumentation you use, very similar, than when you're doing a spine case and you're doing a large operation, you're into the spine, which is the pelvis, the hips. And so you're doing the same procedure, you're just two different specialties are doing it. So it's very easy for us to go into those specialties like orthopedic trauma with a relatively, it's really more of a question of when than a question of engineering challenges and things like that.
I'm guessing like right now, the strategy on the market side is just to drive very heavy adoption first, like within spine surgery, and then leverage that market momentum to move into these other areas, which again, a lot of those other areas, whether it's shoulder surgery, knee surgery, etc., a lot of things are moving to the ASC. I think what's really interesting, and maybe this is a reach on my end to say, but maybe that might be an indication why some of these larger strategics are divesting some of their divisions, because since everything's moving to the ASC and a lot of these larger strategics aren't set up to move fast enough to service them, they're going to have to become a lot more nimble. And this is where I think a lot of opportunities for startups. I want to ask you about this because one thing that did stand out in our research about the company is that you guys have on your website, there's this one area called research. And usually when it comes to startups, I click on these research or publications tabs, and we'll find like 2 or 3 publications. You guys have a lot of publications, and you have a bunch under TrackX, but then you have orthopedics, you have spine, robotics, pain management, pediatrics, cardiac, GI, urology. Why so much research? Why I like it, but maybe you can explain to the audience, like why such a heavy research approach?
Some of it comes from the fact that I came from academia. So I came from Duke, and with an idea of we should be able to, if we really can create a technology that has value, we should be able to prove that technology has value. And so we set out early on to make sure that we had data that supported what we were doing, and can the dog hunt, if it were. So we started by doing randomized controlled trials, and which is really uncommon for obviously for our size, but we have a couple of randomized control trials about our product that show substantial time savings and substantial radiation reduction, which was great because it helped our FDA clearance. It allowed us to say we can reduce radiation, reduce time of surgery, make surgery accurate, which is something that is, by getting the data, we're able to have clearance to be able to say those things, which is a huge benefit for our company. And then we can go to new product committees and the like in the hospital and sell not just a concept, but sell an execution of concept. So we can show that we have paper after paper where we can just knock a substantial time off of the lateral, substantial retractor time off of the lateral, substantial time off of an endoscopy case. We can make all these cases faster, more efficient. We can drop radiation across the board. Paper saying 70, 75, 80. We have one that says 92% radiation reduction. And that's in randomized data. And so we're able to present data that's better than anyone else in terms of radiation reduction, that's high quality research, and that really can stand on its own.
That's fantastic. And overall, how's the reception been, I guess, with the, spine community?
We're really happy with with surgeons gravitating towards our product and really seeing the value. I think if you have a surgeon who's doing, as an example, they're going to get radiated like crazy. No one likes that. Everyone realizes it's a requirement of doing surgery. It's something we do. As a surgeon, if you use radiation all the time, like a spine surgeon, cardiac guy, you're going to get an increased risk of getting cataracts. Oh yeah, 50% of us will get cataracts. And that's not just me, that's my scrub nurse, that's other people on the road. You have a 4 times higher rate of cancer, is what the data seems to show. There are some real problems with radiation. There's no reason people would do this. It wasn't absolutely required. And it is because we need to be able to do surgery and do surgery safely. And so we take that burden on ourselves. And I think you don't think about that on a day-to-day basis. I don't think you can. I don't think you can say, hey, should I take this x-ray or is this x-ray going to increase my chance of cancer? Because it does. But at the same time, I need that x-ray to do surgery safely on that patient. And so we're trying to give people tools so that the ones who have always seen a problem with the alternatives where they can't re-register, so they don't trust it. And that's the trust is the real issue here. That's what re-register is just a way of saying trust. If you're doing something right, you can move fast. If you're doing something right, then you don't need to take that x-ray. Or you can take the x-ray, so you do occasionally do it just so you feel comfortable. And you can keep moving and keep doing it fast. Don't get radiated. Do surgery better. That's cool.
And just on a technical side, when it comes to the registration, are there any moments where, the technology, in robotics, one of the issues is if the patient moves around a lot, right? While you're doing the surgery, and then you have to re-register, and that's what sort of introduced these anatomical fiduciary markers. Do you guys have that kind of an issue?
Patient moving is a real issue. A reference array, which is the thing that it's locked onto, being bumped is a real issue. It's going to happen. It's not if it'll happen. It's going to happen. You're just nodding because you've been there. In low-R, you've seen it. It happens all the time. So re-registering, getting it so that it's reaccurate again, is something that is, in my head, a requirement of these kind of technologies. It's why we designed a product that literally that's what it does. Instantaneously get it more accurate, go back to being accurate again. And it's literally instantaneous. And when that's the secret sauce, because ultimately it's not if, it's when. And if we can make sure that is a seamless process and it becomes a seamless workflow, then it becomes exactly the workflow you're used to doing, which is how you get surgeons to adopt it by not forcing them into.
But a lot less fluoro.
It becomes a lot less fluoro because they learn they don't need to take that x-ray. And they can keep moving, and they take the critical x-rays and not the non-critical x-rays. Everyone's taking the critical x-rays. It's just a question of how many non-critical x-rays, meaning how many times does it take you to do this until you hit the nail on the head, right? And they want to make sure they take the x-ray when you hit the nail on the head. They just don't want to take the other 90 x-rays they're taking trying to get there. That's what we're trying to get rid of.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then just kind of wrap things up. And again, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to finally have you on the podcast and everything. But for the rest of the year, I would imagine you guys are going to go to NASA. Are there any other conferences that you'll be attending that surgeons or investors can maybe check you guys out and meet with you?
We're at Palo next week, and we'll be at ESMIS and probably at most of the and NAS. CNS is.
Okay, got it. just because you're not only the founder of a spine surgery, a surgical spine company, but you're a spine surgeon yourself. I'm sure you enjoy going to all the meetings. Which one is your favorite spine meeting and why?
I don't know if I could answer that one. I
had to ask. I had to try.
I like the smaller meetings, like the meetings where the smaller they are, more intimate, and the more you get the a good back and forth. You get to get people and interact with them. Those are the ones that are most valuable in my head. Larger ones are harder.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, in medical education, if we're coming to a time where we're moving away from these like mega meetings, so we're seeing that across all other specialties here on our end, with the exception of TCT, which is the transcatheter meeting. That one's still massive and very well attended, but we're starting to notice that on our end, that like the smaller intimate meetings are a lot better. I think, especially with people getting more specialized and focused on certain areas, like either you go to this massive meeting where you see a little bit of that procedure you're interested in, or you go to a smaller meeting, you have a lot more,
It's easier to meet people. It's easier to find people, to actually interact, learn. It's just, it's probably a better venue,
Absolutely. Well, look, I know you guys are, startup and you're growing, but I would love in the future to see TrackX put together its own, customer-based meeting for essentially this category that you guys are designing, which is, doing spine surgery with a lot less fluoro. I'm sure there's a lot of really interesting procedural applications and techniques that your own users are coming up with. Have you seen anything like that? Have any users kind of come back and shared like, sort of new applications or techniques?
Oh, it's great. It's to see people take your, say your baby, and figure out what it can actually do and figure out how you can do it better. And surgeons come back to us and say, this is where the application is not what you guys are thinking. It's actually a great way to really, it's the interactive way that a company can really create a great product. Hopefully is to hear their customers and learn and morph and constantly improve it.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Isaacs, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. For those who are listening, if you know an investor who's interested in spine, or a spine surgeon, go ahead and forward this episode onto them. If you want to learn more, go to the website. That's TrackX, TrackX.tech. I'm your host, Omar Khateeb. As always, we'll see you all next. Bye.
Stay garage.
Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.